The afternoon sun filtered through the dusty classroom windows, casting golden streaks across rows of wooden desks. Daniel adjusted his glasses and set down the pile of graded assignments. The art room smelled faintly of paint and chalk, the comforting scent of creativity and quiet. He was used to the rhythm of small-town life, morning walks to the school, the laughter of children echoing down the hallways, and evenings spent sketching alone in his little studio. His life was simple, predictable, and peaceful. Among the dozens of students who came and went each year, one girl rarely drew attention, Amara. She was always present, always quiet, always sitting in the last row by the window. Her uniform was neat but worn, her shoes scuffed, her hair tied back in a simple braid. When he spoke to the class, her gaze often drifted outside. Lost in thought, Daniel had tried to encourage her once or twice. "Amara, you can come closer if you can't see, or don't be afraid to use more color." She would only nod politely and go back to her quiet sketches. He assumed she was shy, maybe just another student trying to get through the year without drawing attention. And so, like everyone else, he overlooked her. Until one evening, class had ended, and the room was empty except for the rustle of papers and the faint hum of ceiling fans. Daniel was tidying up when he noticed something on one of the back desks, a small, tattered sketchbook. He picked it up and saw the name scrawled inside the cover in neat handwriting, Amara N. He hesitated. He didn't usually pry into students' personal work, but something about the book felt different. Maybe it was the way it had been left open slightly, as if inviting him to look. He sat down, flipped the first page. The drawings were simple: trees, markets, children playing near rivers. But there was something alive in them, a pulse of emotion, an understanding of light and sorrow that no ordinary student could capture. He turned another page, a portrait of a woman smiling sadly, her eyes filled with longing. Another, a crowd drawn in charcoal, every face filled with different pain and hope. Daniel leaned back, stunned. This wasn't the work of an ordinary student. This was the work of someone who felt deeply, someone who carried a story inside her, waiting to be told. And that was the moment Daniel realized Amara wasn't just quiet. She was hiding something extraordinary. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. The images from Amara's sketchbook kept replaying in his mind. The faces, the fear, the heartbreak she had captured with nothing but pencil and paper. Each stroke seemed to carry 1,000 unspoken words. By morning, he found himself reaching for the sketchbook again. It lay on his desk like a silent confession. He turned the pages carefully, feeling as though he were trespassing into a sacred space. The scenes changed as he went further, from simple village life to moments of chaos. A burning hut, people running, soldiers in the distance, children crying beside an overturned basket of fruit. Each page carried the weight of tragedy, but also resilience, a sense that, despite the pain, life refused to die. Daniel sat back, overwhelmed. These weren't just drawings. They were history. Memories preserved by a girl who had seen too much, too soon. He closed the sketchbook gently and decided he needed to talk to her. That afternoon, after school, he saw her sitting beneath the old mango tree near the playground. Her sketchbook, another one, smaller and newer, rested on her knees. She drew slowly as if each line required courage. Daniel approached quietly. "You forgot your sketchbook yesterday," he said, holding it out. Amara looked up, startled. Her eyes flickered between him and the book, and for a moment she seemed ready to run. Then she lowered her gaze and said softly, "Thank you, sir." He hesitated before sitting on the nearby bench. "Your drawings? They're powerful. They feel real." She didn't respond at first. The silence stretched, filled only by the rustle of leaves. Finally she whispered, "They are real." Daniel leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Her voice trembled slightly. "They're memories I can't forget." For a long moment neither spoke. Daniel could hear children laughing faintly in the distance. The sound felt strange, too bright against her words. Amara's fingers traced the edge of her notebook. "When I was little," she began, "my village was attacked. People fought over land and money. My parents, they tried to protect us, but..." Her voice broke. "After that, I stopped talking for a long time. Drawing was the only way to remember without breaking." Daniel's heart tightened. He had taught hundreds of students, but he'd never encountered a story like hers. "You've turned your pain into something beautiful," he said gently. Amara shook her head. It's not beautiful. It's just the only thing that keeps me from forgetting who they were. Daniel nodded slowly. Art isn't always about beauty, Amara. Sometimes it's about truth. Her eyes lifted toward him. For the first time, she met his gaze fully. Then maybe my truth is too heavy for others. He smiled faintly. Let me decide that. From that day forward, Daniel began to mentor her quietly. He invited her to stay after class, offering tips on shading, composition, and storytelling through images. But what he really taught her was courage. The courage to believe her story mattered. At first, she was hesitant, drawing only when no one else was around. But slowly, as he encouraged her, her confidence grew. He would say things like, "Let the world see what you see," or "Don't erase the pain. Make it speak." Sometimes she would listen silently. Other times she'd ask questions that caught him off guard. "Do you think people care about stories like mine?" "They will," Daniel would reply, "if you tell them with honesty." He began introducing her to different artists, showing her how others had used their work to speak about injustice and loss. Frida Kahlo, Kathy Kollwitz, and others who turned suffering into art. Amara listened intently, sketching while he talked. Days turned into weeks. Their bond deepened, not as teacher and student alone, but as two souls who understood the weight of silence. One afternoon, Amara showed him a new drawing, a child standing in the rain holding a broken doll, while shadows loomed behind her. "She's me," Amara said quietly. "The rain means peace, but the shadows never go away." Daniel stared at the drawing, then said softly, "You're brave to face them." She gave a faint smile. "I don't know if it's bravery. Maybe it's just survival." He didn't argue. He knew some wounds never truly healed. They only found better ways to breathe. Soon, whispers spread among other teachers. They noticed how Amara's work had changed, how her once simple sketches now carried emotion and depth beyond her years. A few even suggested Daniel enter her art in a national student exhibition. When he told Amara the idea, she froze. "No, I can't, they'll know." "Know what?" he asked. "Where I came from." Daniel's voice was calm. "Then maybe it's time they did." She looked at him, afraid, uncertain, yet longing for freedom. In that look, Daniel saw what every great artist faces, the moment where pain meets purpose. He reached out gently. "Amara, your art isn't just about what happened to you. It's about everyone who's ever felt invisible and still chose to create." Her eyes glistened. "You really think my story matters?" He nodded. "More than you'll ever know." As the sun set behind the hills, Amara packed her sketchbook, tucking a single pencil behind her ear. Daniel watched her walk away, her steps slow but sure, like someone learning to carry her own story at last. He looked down at the drawing she had left on his desk earlier that day, a teacher standing beside a child under a tree. Above them, written in careful, fragile handwriting, were the words, "Some people teach art, others teach how to live again." The announcement came on a Monday morning, a regional art competition inviting submissions from schools across the district. Posters were pinned to the staff room boards, filled with bright colors and bold text. "Art for change, voices through vision." Daniel read the words twice, his mind already racing. That afternoon, he stood by the classroom window watching Amara sketch beneath the tree, the same spot where their friendship had begun. Her strokes were slow but confident, the paper coming alive with a story only she could tell. Every movement of her pencil carried emotion, not learned, but lived. He knew, deep in his heart, that her art deserved to be seen. Yet when he mentioned the competition gently that day, Amara shook her head immediately. "I can't," she said firmly. Daniel frowned. "Why not? You have something powerful to say. People need to see this." She looked down at her hands. "They won't understand, sir. They'll see drawings of pain and think it's just sadness. They won't see me." "Then help them see you," he said softly. "That's what great art does. It helps others feel what words can't explain." But she only smiled sadly. Some stories are too heavy to share. Daniel didn't press further. Yet that night, as he sat alone at his desk, surrounded by stacks of papers and ungraded assignments, he couldn't let go of her words, or her talent. He took out a folder of her sketches she'd left behind during class, the burning village, the faces of children, the woman holding a candle in darkness. He turned one page after another, feeling something stir in him, pride, sadness, hope. Then an idea formed. A reckless, hopeful idea. A few days later, Daniel stood inside the small art office at the district center, his hands trembling slightly as he handed over a sealed brown envelope. Inside were Amara's sketches. Artist name? The coordinator asked. Daniel hesitated, then wrote, Amara told himself students the right Riverside do, that she would thank him later. That art this honest didn't deserve to be hidden in a dusty notebook forever. Weeks passed. Amara noticed him acting differently, quieter, distracted. Sometimes she caught him watching her with a secretive look, but he always brushed it off. Then one Friday she entered the staff room looking for her attendance sheet. That's when she overheard two teachers whispering near the bulletin board. Did you hear? One of the students from Riverside got shortlisted in the regional finals. They said her name's Amara. The judges were moved by her work. They called it art that speaks the soul of Africa. Amara froze. The papers fell from her hands. She turned slowly, disbelief flooding her face. What did you say? The teachers looked surprised. Oh, you didn't know? Congratulations, dear. Your teacher must have submitted your work. Mr. Daniel, right? She didn't answer. She just walked out. That afternoon, Daniel found her waiting in the empty classroom. Her sketchbook lay open on the desk, her drawings scattered like fallen leaves. Why? She asked, her voice shaking. Daniel's heart sank. Amara, listen. You had no right. She interrupted. Those sketches are mine. They're not for people to stare at and judge like some gallery piece. He tried to explain. I didn't want to betray you. I wanted to give your art a voice. The world needs to see what you've created. You don't understand, she cried. They're not art to me. They're my pain, my memories. Every line is something I lost, my home, my family. How can strangers look at that and clap? Daniel felt a deep ache in his chest. Because they'll feel it. They'll know they're not just drawings, they're truth. You survived, Amara. That story deserves to be seen. But she only shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. You took that choice away from me, she grabbed her things and left before he could say another word. Days turned into silence. The competition. Results were to be announced at the regional art fair in the capital city. Daniel went alone, guilt heavy in his heart. He sat in the back row, surrounded by artists, journalists, and judges who spoke in excited tones. When the host stepped onto the stage and began announcing winners, he barely listened until he heard the name, grand prize winner, Amara, from Riverside School. The hall erupted in applause. Daniel froze, his heart pounding. A large screen displayed her drawings, the same ones she once tried to hide. The crowd went silent as the images shifted. A girl under the rain, a mother holding her child, a broken home lit by candlelight. The judges stood, visibly moved. One of them said, voice thick with emotion, "This is not just art, this is memory, drawn by someone who understands suffering and still finds beauty within it." The crowd cheered again, but Daniel couldn't smile. He looked at the empty chair beside him, the one he had saved for her, and felt only the weight of her absence. Back in the small town, news spread quickly. The local paper printed the headline, "Unknown artist wins grand prize, paints the soul of Africa." People who once ignored the quiet girl in the back of the class now spoke her name with admiration. Her drawings were shared on social media, printed in magazines, discussed on the radio. Everyone wanted to know who she was, the mysterious student who told a nation's story through a pencil. Daniel watched it all unfold with mixed emotions. Pride, yes, but also guilt. He had given her the recognition she deserved, but at a cost she never agreed to pay. When Amara finally returned to school, she avoided everyone. Her classmates tried to talk to her, but she stayed silent. At the end of the day, Daniel found her by the same old tree. She didn't look up when he approached. "I heard the news," she said quietly. "They all call me the soul of Africa, but none of them know the story behind those drawings." Daniel sat beside her. "Then tell them." "Tell your story your way." She finally turned to him, her voice softer now. "I'm not angry anymore, just scared. I don't know how to live in a world that finally sees me." Daniel smiled gently. "Then let's take it one day at a time. You've already done the hardest part. You've been seen." The sun dipped below the hills, painting the sky in orange and gold. For the first time, Amara opened her sketchbook and began to draw again. Not the pain of her past, but the light of her present. This time she drew a girl standing on a stage, holding her own story, not hidden, not silent, but free. The day of the public exhibition arrived, a grand event hosted at the town hall. The banners fluttered in the breeze, each one carrying her name now boldly written, Amara, the voice of memory. People from all around had gathered, teachers, townsfolk, students, reporters, even the mayor. The same people who once passed her by without a glance now spoke of her as if they had always known her brilliance. Daniel stood near the back, heart pounding with quiet pride and nervousness. He hadn't seen Amara since the award announcement, and he didn't know if she would come. The curator stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "today we honor not only art, but courage, the courage to turn pain into beauty. Please welcome the artist herself, Amara." For a moment the crowd murmured in confusion. Then, from the side of the stage, Amara appeared, small, composed, dressed simply in white. The hall fell completely silent. Daniel's breath caught. She looked calm, but her hands trembled as she held the microphone. "Good evening," she began, her voice soft but steady. I never thought I would stand here." The audience leaned forward, listening. "My drawings. They are not just pictures, they are memories. Pieces of my past I never wanted to remember." She paused, her eyes scanning the faces before her. "Years ago, I lost my family in a conflict. I was just a child. I didn't know how to speak about it, so I drew instead." Her words echoed through the hall, raw and unfiltered. "Every face, every shadow you see on these pages is real. These are people who lived, laughed, and were forgotten. I drew them so they wouldn't disappear again." Tears shimmered in the crowd. Even the reporters, who had come expecting a spectacle, lowered their cameras. Amara's voice grew stronger. "For years, I stayed silent because I thought my pain didn't matter. But now I know that silence doesn't protect us. It only hides our strength." She looked toward Daniel, who stood at the back, eyes glistening with pride. Their gaze met, a silent exchange of forgiveness and gratitude. Then she turned back to the crowd. "I didn't create these drawings to win awards or to be famous. I created them so others would remember. So we'd all remember that even in sorrow, beauty can survive." When she finished, there was a heartbeat of silence. Then the hall erupted into applause, not loud or chaotic, but heartfelt, thunderous, full of emotion. People stood, clapping and wiping their tears. Daniel smiled through the blur in his eyes. The shy girl who once sat at the back of his class was now standing before hundreds. Not as a victim, but as a voice, strong, steady, and seen. For the first time, Amara smiled too, a real, unburdened smile. And in that moment, she was no longer the quiet student or the mysterious artist. She was Amara, a symbol of resilience, memory, and grace. Months passed since that unforgettable night. The story of Amara, the girl who painted memory, spread far beyond their small town. Newspapers, art blogs, and national galleries featured her work. Her drawings were no longer just pieces of paper. They had become windows into forgotten lives, sparking conversations about war, loss, and hope across the country. At a national exhibition in the capital, people stood for hours before her pieces, silent, moved, changed. The organizers decided that proceeds from her art would go toward helping children displaced by conflict. What had once been her private grief now became a bridge, connecting her pain to the healing of others. Back in the small town, life continued quietly for Daniel. He still taught art in the same modest classroom, still encouraged his students to find their voices through colors and lines. But something had changed in him. Every time he looked at a blank canvas, he saw more than an empty space. He saw possibility. One afternoon, as sunlight poured into his desk, he noticed an envelope tucked between his sketch papers. His name was written on it in soft, careful handwriting. It was from Amara. Inside there was a folded sheet, a drawing. In it she had sketched herself as a little girl, sitting on the ground with a blank page before her. Beside her stood a man, Daniel, gently placing a paintbrush in her hand. Both of them were smiling. Below the drawing, a single line was written in pencil. "You taught me to see myself through more than pain." Daniel stared at it for a long time, his throat tightening. He smiled, not with pride, but with quiet gratitude. He framed the drawing and hung it in his classroom, right above the chalkboard. His students often asked who drew it. He would smile and say, "A student who learned that art isn't just about beauty, it's about truth." Outside, the same sunlit path led from the school to the town, where people now spoke her name with respect and affection. The story of Amara and her teacher became one of those quiet legends, told not for fame, but as a reminder.